Next week is my son's birthday, and I'd like to order a cake for 20 people, Emily said. Hearing this, I fell silent. 20 servings isn't a typical request, but she must have known I couldn't refuse. Understood, I muttered softly. Emily smirked unpleasantly, but I was determined to have the last laugh. I clenched my fists, resolute not to let her have her way. My name is Rothy. I'm a regular housewife who works part-time at a local supermarket. My only son, Nicholas, graduated from college and found a job at a nearby company. We are a happy family living together harmoniously. However, there's one unpleasant person at my part-time job, Emily. Emily's father, Christopher, is an executive at the supermarket. She transferred here from a different company about 2 years ago. Despite being a full-time employee hired mid-career, us part-timers, including me, have been here longer. From the beginning, Emily has been arrogant, ignoring advice and guidance. Both the staff and part-timers are at their wits' end. About a year ago, a part-timer named Rachel confronted her. Emily, even if your dad's an executive, you're just an employee here. We part-timers are your seniors. You should speak respectfully and listen to our advice. I thought Rachel was amazing for saying what no one else would. However, soon after, Rachel was transferred to a location too far for her to commute, forcing her to resign. Everyone thought it was Emily's doing, but nobody dared to say it out loud. Since then, no one has opposed her. The supermarket where I've worked for a long time is more than just a job. It's a cherished place where I belong. I often hang out with my part-time colleagues, and apart from Emily, we have good relationships. Then one day, as I continued to work, hoping for these happy days to last, something happened. Mom, I'm thinking of getting married, Nicholas announced. My husband Dylan and I were overjoyed. Truth be told, I always wanted a daughter to go shopping with, have tea with, and share a mother-daughter relationship. But after Nicholas, we weren't blessed with more children, so that dream remained unfulfilled. I hoped that by getting along with Nicholas's wife, I could build such a relationship. What's she like? I eagerly asked. Nicholas seemed happy. She's a very kind girl. Her parents seem well established, like she comes from a good family. I'm still a bit worried if I'm good enough for her. That's wonderful. I'm excited to meet her, I replied. Her name is Emily, Nicholas continued. He often talked about her, saying Emily this and Emily that. She apparently attends cooking classes and is good at cooking. She seems to like sweets too. Hearing Nicholas talk about her made me happy. A week after Nicholas's news on the weekend, she was coming over to meet us. She arranged it to match my day off. Not being as skilled in cooking to impress someone who excels at it, I ordered pizza and prepared a cake for that day. Dylan and I waited at home for Nicholas to bring her over. Then the long-awaited doorbell rang. She's here, I announced, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. I rushed from the living room to the front door. We're back. Emily, this is Mom, Nicholas said. As I turned to the woman beside him, I froze in shock. Nice to meet you, I'm Emily. Hi, Emily. Right before me stood Emily, the very source of my troubles at my part-time supermarket job. You know my mom? Nicholas asked. I had no idea Nicholas's mom was you. Emily seemed equally surprised. Come in for now, please, I said, still shaken, inviting them inside. Leaving me at the entrance, Nicholas led Emily to the living room. Hearing them talk with Dylan, I took a deep breath to calm myself. They had met at university. Emily is 2 years older than Nicholas. They were introduced by an acquaintance and reconnected about a year ago, eventually starting to date. I was surprised to learn your part-time job was at my workplace. You said you were in administration, so I thought you worked at a law office near the supermarket, Nicholas said, laughing nonchalantly, unaware of where his girlfriend worked. Indeed, Emily had graduated from law school and used to work at a law firm. Nicholas must have assumed she continued working at a law office and never asked explicitly. We chatted around the pizza, the conversation mingling with the unexpected reality of our new connection. I could only force a smile, unable to accept the reality and wishing it was just a dream. I'm truly surprised to think you're Rothy's son. I've been under your mom's care at work, Emily said, feigning innocence as if she treated us part-timers as anything but slaves. That's not true. I'm sure everyone's grateful for someone like you. Mom always says she enjoys her job and that there are nice people at the supermarket, Nicholas said. That's nice to hear, I replied, though I never intended to include Emily in that group of good people. Naturally, I couldn't say such a thing. so I stood up. I'll go prepare the dessert. Emily, would you like coffee or tea? I wanted to be alone, my heart racing. I needed to calm down quickly. I'll help, Emily, she said suddenly, standing up, an unusual gesture from her considering our part-time job. It's okay, you're a guest. Please sit down, I insisted, but Emily walked to the kitchen. Dylan and Nicholas watched with smiles, so I sighed quietly. However, Emily didn't miss a beat. It's really surprising to think you'll be my mother-in-law. Yes, that's right. It will be easier to get along. Looking forward to it. What did she mean by that? I had a bad feeling about those words, but I tried to keep her smile was a sneer, always displaying contempt towards me at work. Just so you know, don't say anything unnecessary to Nicholas. Her words wiped the smile from my face. Emily knew. She knew she was disliked by us part-timers simply because I happened to be Nicholas's mom. She must have been planning to do whatever she wanted, using Christopher and Nicholas as shields. I turned pale, frightened by her, fearing she would destroy our happy days. Emily eventually left the kitchen without helping. That must have been her purpose for coming here. What about the preparation? Nicholas's voice interrupted. Emily replied curtly. I returned cheerily, not wanting to be in the way, so I came back. I told Nicholas, won't you reconsider the marriage? But my words would undoubtedly make my son dislike me. Don't interfere with Nicholas's marriage, even Dylan scolded me. So I just watched the two of them. Still, they seemed to have a good marriage, and Nicholas looked happy. A month after the marriage, I found out Emily was pregnant. Although it was complicated, I was also happy. Nicholas and Emily built a house next to ours, a separate household from Nicholas's. Dylan told me you should be a little more considerate, but knowing Emily's true nature, I wanted to avoid her. Still, I loved my grandson. His name was Ethan, a lively boy I rarely saw, but I looked forward to hearing his healthy cries. However, about 6 months after he was born, there was a day when his crying could be heard all day long. I finally rang the neighbor's doorbell. What is it? I said. Hello. Probably because I was the one who called out. Emily, who seemed to have been asleep, came to the door. Knowing it was me, I was worried because Ethan had been crying non-stop. Is everything okay? I simply stated the reason, but Emily looked annoyed. Are you saying I'm neglecting Ethan? She retorted sharply. No, that's not what I'm saying. I was just worried. If you're tired, I can wash him or help in any way, I hastily offered. But Emily didn't seem to hear. Dealing with modern kids is difficult, she muttered dismissively. In the end, I was turned away, and Ethan kept crying. A few days later, Emily came to our house with Ethan in her arms. Rothy, could you watch Ethan for a bit? She asked unexpectedly. Yes, of course, I replied, surprised by the sudden change in attitude. What's this about? I tried to understand the situation, but Emily left Ethan and his things at our house and departed. Oh, Ethan's here, Dylan noticed from the entrance, happily taking Ethan from my hands and heading to the living room. I followed Dylan, carrying Ethan's belongings. Since then, Emily started leaving Ethan with us frequently from morning till night. It was like running a daycare alongside my part-time job. Emily was on parental. I did agree to watch him, but there's a limit. I talked to Dylan and Nicholas about it, but they don't seem to take it seriously. Eventually, I had to take time off work or ask Dylan to watch Ethan briefly so I could rush to and from work. However, interfering too much and upsetting Emily would be troublesome. Despite the difficulty, I enjoy and cherish my time with Ethan. Dylan also looks forward to Ethan's daily visits. Busy but happy, the three of us spent enjoyable times together. Half a year later, Ethan's first birthday was approaching, and I was pondering what to give him as his first present. In the past, birthdays meant inviting relatives for celebrations, but there was no invitation from Nicholas or Emily. They must be planning a modest family celebration. While looking at my phone and thinking this, I received a call. It's Emily. What could it be? I answered the phone suspiciously, as Emily usually didn't contact me. Hello, Rothy. As you probably know, next week is my son's birthday, so I'd like a cake for 20. People were surprised by this sudden request. I was at a loss for words. What do you mean? I managed to ask. Just what I said. We're inviting relatives for a celebration, so I'm asking for the cake. I plan to serve a meal, so I can't manage the cake too. Plus, I thought I'd give you a chance to show off. Aren't I kind? Emily's words filled my mind with question marks. We weren't even invited to the celebration, and a cake for 20 people is not something a regular person would request. Emily's relatives, aunts, and uncles will be among the about 20 guests. Surely my employer at the supermarket and Emily's father-in-law, Christopher, will be there too, I thought, trying to make sense of the situation. I already told Dad that you will make the cake. It's a chance to show your good side. Who knows? You might get promoted to a full-time position, Emily said mockingly. I don't aspire to be a full-time employee, I replied quietly. As a part-timer, I shouldn't worry so much, but I couldn't forget Rachel, who was driven to resign. I told myself I must avoid being pushed into quitting. Emily's words are like knowing I couldn't refuse, knowing she was exploiting my weakness. Cakes are easy. I'm more experienced in cooking, so I'll give advice, she said presumptuously, more than I had anticipated. Reluctantly, I agreed. All right, but with 20 people, maybe you should reconsider serving individual portions or using a large platter, I suggested. Ha! I'm the senior here. I'm not asking for advice. And what do you mean, okay? Can't you speak more respectfully? Emily retorted sharply. What kind of person is she? I held back my words, muttering quietly, understood. I could imagine Emily's smirking face on the other end of the phone, my frustration seeping through. She probably planned to ridicule me by presenting her perfect full course alongside my poor cake. But I wouldn't let that happen. I made a decision. Of course, Ethan was the star. I wanted to make his first birthday memorable, even though he wouldn't remember it. I started planning the cake design and went to a baking supply store for ingredients. Though I felt forced, I was also excited. Emily seemed annoyed by my amateur excitement. It won't amount to much. You should have asked me, the senior, for advice, she said when she came over to scoff. But I had no time for that. Later, Dylan and I were officially invited to the birthday. On the day, Dylan, with nothing else to do, left early for their house. It's too early, I said, but he was too excited. I sent him off with a smile and got up, ready to prepare. I muttered, checking the time, when the doorbell rang. Rothy, are you ready? Emily started entering without permission. She frowned upon seeing me relaxed. What, you were sitting? Where's the cake? I was about to start. Don't worry, I'll bring it on time, I assured her. It was only 8:00 a.m., 4 hours until everyone arrived, but Emily was shocked. An amateur can't make a cake for 20 people in 4 hours, she ranted. I've been preparing perfect dishes since 4:00 a.m. Don't ruin the event. Okay, I get it. It's Ethan's birthday. I wouldn't do that, I snapped back, making her frown even more. Just make sure to bring the cake by 12:00 p.m. She left, snorting. Was she bragging about finishing her part? I laughed at her frustration, doing nothing until the door closed. Then, I started. I brought the genoise from another room to the kitchen. A cake for 20 people can't be baked in a home oven, so I had borrowed a friend's oven to bake the large dough. I decorated it with prepared cream and fruits, made Ethan's favorite cars from cookie dough, and by 11:00 a.m., I was satisfied with the finished cake. I hurriedly finished and called Nicholas to safely transport the cake. I left it in a cool place and headed to the room where everyone was gathering, the largest room in Nicholas's house. They planned to eventually build a wall here to divide the room and turn it into a children's room. It was a good opportunity for such an event, as we hadn't celebrated the new house with relatives before. Ethan, unsettled by the crowd, was crying with Nicholas holding him. Everyone smiled at little Ethan's discomfort. Then Emily, with her mother-in-law Olivia's help, proudly brought in her dishes. Here's the appetizer assortment, she announced, placing small plates in front of each guest. The presentation was indeed beautiful and well-crafted. However, by the time she finished serving everyone, the first plates needed clearing. Ethan was still crying, and Emily and Olivia were busy. I stood to help, but Christopher said, "You should sit, Rothy. We're supposed to be the guests." Indeed, I agreed and sat back down, but the situation looked tough. I took Ethan from Nicholas and suggested he help Emily. As soon as I held Ethan, he became happy and started laughing. Everyone was charmed by this, but Emily looked displeased. She couldn't treat me like a pawn anymore, especially after hearing Christopher's earlier words. Christopher had been attentive, asking me about my job and Emily. I couldn't tell him everything, but our conversation brought up Rachel, who had been forced to resign. Did he really do that? He didn't seem like such a person. The dishes served at intervals of 10 minutes each were somehow completed, But judging by the relatives' reactions, it didn't seem they were fully satisfied. No matter how confident Emily was in her cooking, she should have considered serving family-style dishes given the guests and situation. All the dishes are served. Did everyone enjoy them? Emily said this with a happy expression. It seemed she was the most. Olivia next to her hadn't eaten anything and looked distressed, which was pitiable. Rothy has made Ethan's cake. It's ready, right? Emily turned to me. Yes, I'll bring it, I replied. I asked Nicholas for help and brought in a large cake. Emily's nieces and nephews gathered around the big box. Dylan held Ethan, who didn't show interest yet, but the adults were curious about the large cake box. Here it is. Nicholas and I opened the box. Cheers erupted at the sight of the cake we revealed. The children's genuine reactions were delightful, and I couldn't help but smile. The relatives were impressed, asking, "Did you really make this?" They took pictures. However, Emily, in a voice that cut through the calm atmosphere, exclaimed loudly, "What? You said you'd make it, not buy it. I wanted a unique cake for Ethan." She must have been tired and hungry. Her anger peaked with everyone's positive response to my cake. I did make it. Lies, you weren't doing anything this morning. The genoise was already baked, and the decoration was ready, Emily insisted, surprised. Genoise. It's a type of sponge cake. I've always called it that. I smiled at Emily. Ha, Christopher laughed. Then Dylan explained, "Actually, my wife used to be a pastry chef. I couldn't bake a cake for 20 people in our oven, so I asked a friend to borrow theirs and baked it yesterday." When I said that, Emily's face fell. She must have been upset, her plans having gone awry. It was fun to bake such a large cake after a long time. Thank you for the opportunity, Emily. Now, let's take pictures with Ethan and the cake, and then we can all enjoy it, I suggested. Seeing everyone's the most gratifying part was seeing everyone smile. Ethan, influenced by everyone's joy, smiled too. The group photo captured Emily's stained face amid everyone else beaming, a moment worth cherishing without any malice. While everyone enjoyed the cake, I held Ethan, who happily ate his own cake made of yogurt cream and banana pancakes. After seeing off the relatives and cleaning up with Olivia, I finally had a moment to relax. "Ethan is really attached to you, Rothy," Olivia remarked, watching Ethan in my arms as we all took a coffee break. Nicholas responded, "She always looks after him." I noticed Emily's stunned expression, but before she could react, Christopher intervened. "What do you mean, always? Aren't you on parental leave?" Christopher's question caught Emily off guard. "Well, not always, just occasionally, like when I go to the hospital," Emily replied sheepishly. I gave a wry smile, unable to say anything. Nicholas realized his slip-up and looked uneasy. Christopher, noticing today's events and Emily's behavior, seemed contemplative. "Don't lie, tell the truth," he demanded. Emily murmured in a small voice, "I left him when I went out with friends." Christopher pressed further, "Is that all you burdened her with? You didn't know Rothy was a pastry chef, did you? Then why did you ask her to make such a big cake? Surely you were trying to be mean to her." Emily turned red and fell silent at Christopher's words, caught off guard. Nicholas was flustered. "Apologize to Rothy," he said firmly to Emily. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked at me and murmured softly, "I'm sorry." Christopher then politely bid farewell to Dylan and me. "I'm sorry for the trouble my daughter caused," he said. "It's all right, we understand you're busy, but please come to visit sometimes," we replied, seeing off their parents-in-law. Regarding Rachel, it seemed Christopher was not involved. Emily had persuaded the manager to transfer her after I inquired about it. Learning the truth, Christopher disciplined the manager and Emily had to resign at his behest. Christopher, angry at her for disgracing him, later visited the store where I worked to apologize. He indeed seems to be a responsible person. Since then, Emily has been respectful and no longer belittles people. She seems to genuinely care for Ethan. Nicholas, unaware of her previous coldness towards me, was disillusioned after learning everything. It was the first time he scolded Emily. Emily realized her mistakes and became much more subdued, as if she had changed as a person. She probably had been acting as she pleased, misusing Christopher's influence and thinking herself important. Being reprimanded by her father and husband at her age was a humbling experience. While I inwardly chuckled at this, I felt relieved. Looking at the photo from that day, I naturally continued my part-time job. There was no longer the needless burden of unexpectedly taking care of Ethan, so it didn't cause any issues with my shifts. I've been enjoying my time as usual, going out with my part-time colleagues. Emily's attitude has changed. She no longer behaves as before and has even asked me to teach her how to bake cakes. I was genuinely happy about this. While it's not the mother-daughter relationship I had dreamed of, I hope to gradually build a good relationship with my son's wife. I want us to become a family that celebrates and watches over